Hey guys, I thought I'd talk to you guys about the idea of strategy and tactics versus policy and picking a party. So it's actually really interesting, the idea. If you start to think of, just play with it in your head, the idea that supporting a party is a religion. Okay, so politics is meant to be a tool. Well, it's argued, but one way of looking at politics is as a tool to get the things you want in a community to happen. Okay, so whether or not this is right or wrong, the way that we go about politics today is usually someone picks a side or a party who represents some view that they want to change in. So maybe there's someone who represents environmental sort of policies more than someone else, and you want to change in the environment, so you support that particular party. Or someone wants to support minimum wage as opposed to getting rid of it, so they pick that particular party, which is all well and good. However, when they pick a party, usually the party will be doing things that they also don't agree with, and they'll stick with it because the thing that they do want more than the things that they don't want is with one particular party. What I'm here to sort of talk to you about is the idea that that's actually the same state or way of thinking as a religion. See, in religion, you put your faith in something. You say, oh, this is what I believe, and it will give me what I want, regardless of whatever results they're getting. And you stick to a narrative, and you say that that narrative is correct, and it's the narrative of the group, whatever that may be. So in a political party, it may be strong environmental carbon reduction, and that's the right thing because it's going to destroy the entire world. I'm not here to argue about the science or not. I'm just saying that that's a particular narrative that certain groups hold, whereas other groups hold the opposite. Now, thing is, whether or not you believe in those things, you'll find yourself supporting a group, and that's really dangerous. And it's dangerous because the idea of change, well, it's a gecko. The idea of change is that, like in political arenas that have really been corrective in time, have been these groups arise to fix something, and then they disappear once that thing is fixed. Which is more of a specific strategy and set of tactics, and then once that time is over, then the strategy would no longer work and the tactics would no longer work. And that's the mindset I would like you guys to sort of think about. So what this really means is blind submission to a party or their policies or any actual group. When you look at the policies as a whole, there will always be a percentage of those policies that don't necessarily serve the best interests. Okay, and this is because rather than having singular individual issues that they focus on that they'll fix, they have a whole myriad of things, hundreds if not thousands, and even if they don't say it, they make a lot of changes, and just in very small scale things and sometimes large scale things. So you always end up with a situation where politicians don't do what they said they were going to do, or they do all these other things as well. And I mean, this is particularly obvious if you look at the very strong reform-minded people and equal rights-minded people, and you talk to them about Tony Abbott today, and they're going off their nut about him. They hate him, right? And I'm not here to defend Tony Abbott. I'm just saying, or his government, or the governments involved in him, left on his side and against him. But what I'm talking about is that if people have a different mindset where they say no, the only thing I'm interested in is this specific issue, and I want a strategy put through no matter what, which is supports this issue, and they don't care which side it is, and they don't get involved in being loyal to a specific party, then you're going to start to see some really strong changes. Because right now, the political base of Australian politics usually has a very large proportion of loyalty. Okay, so the people who vote, they usually vote the same way pretty much every time. Given, you get some changes when people put in taxes, they said they wouldn't, or they lie about certain things, yada yada, but typically speaking, people are pretty consistent. They form a habit, okay, but that's because their thinking is pick the party you like the sound of, right? Well, that doesn't work, because then you find yourself loyal to something beyond the results that you want. Okay, and you've got to remember that you've got to be loyal to the specific results you want, and then the way that you go about forcing that is by basically voicing strategies or ideas that will allow those people to do what you want. Now, if they feel that a certain idea is going to get them more loyalty and yada yada, then they'll do it. Like if they feel like, oh, well, these people are all for environment, then we'll go for environment, right? But if they change that, don't remain loyal. And a lot of people do, and this is because most people aren't aware of what's going on in politics, really. They're aware of the effects, but not actually the things like the policies and what people actually stand for. And if they form separate groups outside, separate organizations outside of the government, like associations, which hold these people accountable, the government is very well aware of the temperament of the public, and when these groups form, they're forced basically because the government view resistance of the general population as a threat. So the more resistance against what they have done that they feel, the more likely they are to at least submit to the ideas that these people hold. So if you hold to a certain demand, then they're forced to deal with it, okay? And this is something that people don't do when voting. But by the way, voting isn't necessarily just the way you do it. It's about vocalization. It's about groups getting out there and really being willing to do whatever it takes to get the result you want, and making it clear that this is not something that will go away for them, because the best wish, or the biggest wish of these political parties, is that these specific groups that want a specific outcome for the people go away, so that they can do whatever they want to make the money they want, and whether in politics, I guess, get the power they want. But if these groups don't go away, then they're stuck with it. They've got to concede. Now this is a double-edged sword, because on the other hand, there are groups out there that don't want the best for people, but they want the best for a specific minority, and that minority may not have the best thing in mind for everyone, but they put the pressure on the government, and the government concedes to whatever these people want, okay? So it works both ways. But the point is, when you're thinking about politics, don't fall for the party idea, like I want this party or that party. Rather, start to think in the idea of I want what group am I, or what sort of people, and what specific outcome do I want, and how can I connect these people up? And if you start doing that, then just by default the changes will happen that they want. And more specifically, one version of this, I'll say, is there are a lot of groups forming around the idea that Australians don't have human rights. Okay, we're not written into human rights, and this is reflective of a New South Wales finding in the courts recently, where essentially the bikie laws were challenged, and basically the court upheld the bikie laws because they said although the bikie laws do in fact impede on the space given to human rights, human rights are not written into our domestic criminal code or our domestic law, therefore they don't have to be followed. Maybe people want human rights, yeah? So there are groups forming around that idea in order to get human rights for each individual Australian. And in that way, by the way, we're the only group in the Western world that isn't written into the human rights right now. So, the only country. So, if enough people get around that idea, then the government's forced to confront it, and they'll then concede in order to prevent overthrow or them being thrown out and losing their power, which is ultimately what they don't want. So, in said differently, don't give them a choice. Yeah. and in that way we can have an Australia where people actually have human rights. And in fact, we could even have our own rights, like amendments like America had before it became sort of rotten. So we could have rights like that protect each citizen. We have a very good opportunity to sort of make a change in society. And really, what does that take? Now that we're getting into that idea, what does it take? Well, to use a horrible example, if you look at a guy like Hitler, there's actually a common meme going around, which is no political rant is complete without a Hitler reference. Pretty extreme, but actually you'll notice it in mainstream media and CNN and stuff if you're looking at American news, that everything has a Hitler reference. But why I'm using it is, what percentage of the German population supported the National Socialist Party? And it was about 10%. Okay, if 10% of people support an idea, even with a guy like Hitler, he gets in. Okay, now, could 10% of the Australian population support human rights? I think so, and I think there's a great amount of political pressure that could be put on the government in order to have these human rights enacted. And yeah, alright, cheers guys, food for thought.